Hi, welcome. Thank you so much for coming. It's good to see your name because I can't see you in person. Hi, thank you so much for coming. We're really looking forward to having you all here. Thank you, thank you. We're going to get started in approximately 20 seconds to respect everybody's times. Thank you. People are popping in. It's looking good. Hi, everybody. Hello, welcome. So happy to have you. Okay, I think we are going to get started. It is 7 o'clock on the dot. So thank you all for being here, being timely, and good evening, everybody. And welcome to Eating Disorders, Understanding Eating Disorders, brought to you by NAMI Cook County North Suburban, Dr. Maria Rago, the president of ANAD and the Wilmette Public Library. ANAD, or the National Association of Anorexia Nervosa and Associated Disorder, is a free peer support community here to help anyone struggling with an eating disorder. ANAD is a nonprofit organization that offers support groups and webinars, has a mentorship program, a helpline, and a treatment directory for those in need. More information can be found at www.anad.org. Before we begin, I would like to take a second to thank the Wilmette Public Library for sponsoring this event. The Wilmette Public Library welcomes everyone with collections, resources, and experiences that enrich the lives of individuals and our community through inspiring lifelong curiosity, exploration, and discovery. The Wilmette Public Library is located at 1242 Wilmette Avenue for those interested in stopping by. Thank you so much for your support and for making this event happen. We really, really appreciate your partnership. I am Bree Hoekstra, the program director at NAMI Cook County North Suburban. NAMI, or the National Alliance on Mental Illness, is the nation's largest grassroots mental health organization, providing public awareness, no-cost support, and education programs online and in person so that people and families affected by mental health conditions can build better lives. We are a lifeline to individuals and families who do not know what to expect in their difficult life journey. We offer classes, support groups, and do a lot of local advocacy for mental health. Our programs are totally free and open to those in our community service areas, but we don't turn anyone away who is in need. We are so pleased to have you here with us tonight at our 7th webinar in our Mental Health Conditions, What You Need to Know series. This year, each month, the mental health professionals will dig deep into a variety of mental health conditions to provide further education to raise awareness and fight to end the stigma that surrounds mental health. For our topic tonight, Dr. Maria Rago will further educate us on eating disorders, specifically to learn what an eating disorder is and how common they are, the interaction between eating disorders and other coexisting mental health disorders, and the treatment of eating disorders and how recovery can be successful for many, many people. According to NAMI National, eating disorders is a very complex condition. When you become so preoccupied with food and weight issues that you find it harder and harder to focus on other aspects of your life, it may be an early sign of an eating disorder. Dr. Rago states that eating disorders are both common and dangerous. According to ANAD, 28.8 million Americans are struggling with eating disorders, and 26% attempt suicide. Dr. Rago will spend time discussing the differences between normal eating and anorexia, bulimia, binge eating, and eating disorder NOS, or not otherwise specified. She will dig into treatment options and recovery from eating disorders and will answer any questions that you may have. Our Q&A will be held at the end of the presentation. However, if you would like to type your questions in the chat box during our conversation, please do. We will utilize the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. Our guest speaker tonight, Dr. Maria Rago, is the president of the National Association of Anorexia Nervosa and Associated Disorder, where she is proud to assist the longest standing eating disorder charity in the world to provide support groups, mentorship, helpline, information, and advocacy to our community. She is the founder and the president of Rago and Associates, a powerful team that specializes in eating disorders and other mental health disorders. Dr. Rago was formerly a clinical director of eating disorder services at Linden Oaks Hospital in Naperville. She is the author of Shut Up, Skinny Bitches, a handbook of eating disorder recovery and a cultural commentary. We are so thrilled to have her here tonight to further educate us on this ever important topic. I am honored to welcome our guest speaker, Dr. Maria Rago.
Hi, thank you, Bree. Thank you for asking me. Thank you for including me. Um, Thank you guys for welcoming me. It's really awkward because I can't see anybody, but I'll just send me your spirit so I know you're with me. And I'll start out telling you a funny story. So right now, like I'm going to be 60 next year, but when I was about 26 and I just got my PhD and I went to give a presentation. No, I didn't have my PhD yet. I went on my pre-doctoral internship. And when I was there, my first week, I gave a presentation on eating disorders at a university. And at the end, some students came up to me and they were so sweet. And they said, "Hi, we have eating disorders. And you didn't describe about how our eating disorder is." So, first of all, they were super sweet to tell me that and share that with me because, I just read things in books and I didn't really know. And second of all, I've kind of learned how to be better at describing things and I'm hoping I can give you guys a good understanding of eating disorders. I also want to mention I'm very honored to be president of ANAD. ANAD.org is where you can go if you want like a bunch of information, if you want free support groups, if you want to find out about mentorship programs we run and a helpline and events that we do. And also, we really appreciate any support that people want to give. So yeah, please go to ANAD.org. So next slide, please. So it's easier to know what an eating disorder is, maybe if we start with what is not an eating disorder. So some non-disordered ways of eating are maybe you eat 3 meals a day, you eat snacks, you eat dessert, you're not afraid to eat, you're not dieting, you get healthy daily activity, and you're not worried about food and body image. I mean, in our culture, it's pretty hard to get to this place, but let's just say it's ideal and not an eating disorder. Next slide. What is an eating disorder? A continuum of concern about eating choices, control over eating, and body image. Please ask yourself this question: what percentage of your time do you spend thinking about food, weight, and body image? So that's why it's like a continuum. Some people might be like a little concerned about it, some people don't care about it. And then some people are super, super worried about it, obsessed about it, thinking about it all the time. And maybe it could even start to affect, like maybe people don't even want to eat with other people. People don't want to go out because they're almost behind bricked into a tower of a very lonely place that's where an eating disorder is taking control of a lot of their thoughts and behaviors. So next slide. So, I'll define them, but please, again, keep in mind that the main feature of eating disorders is what I had said before, that preoccupation and that drive. Anorexia nervosa, one way you could describe it is an extreme drive for thinness. I have on here, I wrote obsession with eating and physical activity, extreme fear about eating anything outside of the controlled way that was planned, restricting quantity and types of foods. Sometimes people may feel like they lose control over their eating. Sometimes compensating behaviors. Compensating behaviors is something that's pretty common in eating disorders, which is like, okay, now I ate something and I feel really bad. I have to make up for it in some way, maybe with exercising or something else. And by the way, I'm pretty cautious about what I describe in case there's younger people ever watching or reading eating disorder material. It's important to not give new ideas to people. And I also have on here, people might weigh themselves repeatedly. So this is the definition of anorexia. One comment I want to make here is that um, I've had many, many clients that have anorexia. They meet all the criteria for anorexia, but maybe their weight is not in an underweight category. And then sometimes those people get very invalidated by the medical community. You know, I've had clients who, when they are very highly restricting their food and doing a lot of physical activities, maybe their weight has even dropped a lot, but they're not in an underweight category, that the medical community, you know, have sometimes been like, oh, you don't have anorexia. When I mean, and I mean, I can look at them and know their labs are off, they're dehydrated, they're really sick. And so hopefully I'll even try again and find a medical partner that can understand more about it. Maybe try to redo their, you know, maybe this time they will do their labs. Like they could even look at labs that are, showing electrolyte imbalance, and they'll say, oh, but you're not sick because your weight's not that low. So be careful about that. Don't say someone doesn't have anorexia just based on weight. I know it is in the definition, but if you really know about eating disorders, you don't have to be a certain weight to have those qualities of anorexia and need that help. Next slide. People with anorexia may have a distorted body image. They may be in denial how severe it is. They may have an intense fear of gaining weight. They could have extreme thinness. And here's some of the things that can happen. Cardiac medical issues, bone density issues, low blood pressure, constipation. They could get really cold because they have a decreased body temperature. They might be tired and exhausted, but they keep going. I didn't have it on the slide, but sometimes people, they even have trouble sleeping because they're hungry, and their mind and body are kind of waking them up, and maybe even dreaming about food, saying, let's seek out food. Because you know what? Food is not like optional. It's something everybody needs in order to function. And so if we're not eating, our mind might actually go into a starvation mode and actually seek out food in different ways, even wake us up. And I have organ failure on here. You know, it may seem like, oh, that could never happen, but it does happen. It's a part of this whole process of malnourishment, and the medical problems are severe that go along with it. Next slide. On this slide, I have binge eating and bulimia nervosa. Both of these have recurrent episodes of overeating large amount of foods and feeling lack of control over eating. People might eat when they're already full. They might have like a drive for eating. They might be like thinking about eating all day, preoccupied with it. They might plan a binge and like be like really, it's maybe like some relaxation time or free time, or they're so hungry they can't manage their hunger. They may eat alone or in secret. And as a result of this, they may deal with weight gain. They might feel distressed and ashamed and guilty about eating, but kind of stuck in that cycle. They could have frequent dieting. They could eat very rapidly, and they could eat a lot of times out of emotion, like feeling lonely or feeling sad. You know, some depression and anxiety could lead to eating. Next slide. And compensating behavior, again, this runs all through eating disorders. The technical definition of bulimia is that compensating behaviors in here, but like sometimes the definitions, like to put who in what category, they can be, they can be flexible. Because sometimes people could have one disorder and then go into the other, and then could have a different one because they're very related. You can see a lot of overlap of the behavior of the eating disorder types. So compensating behavior, bulimia is defined by compensating behavior, where you compensate for it. If you eat something, and I mean, a lot of people do a little of this, like, you know how on Thanksgiving people will go, I have to run the turkey trot because I'm eating this big Thanksgiving dinner. So it's like compensating. I can't just eat the dinner. I have to have like some kind of plan to make up for those calories. And a lot of compensating behavior could be restricting behaviors. So let's say I don't eat all day because I'm going to binge at night, or maybe I don't even want to binge at night, but I don't eat all day, or I eat very little in the day, and I'm thinking I'm not going to eat. but guess what? I'm starving, so I do. And then binge eating in bulimia and binge eating disorder, they can lead to weight gain, and also, metabolic syndrome can occur from the overeating. Next slide. Another eating disorder that people have been speaking out a lot more about, probably in the last 10, 15 years than when I first started to get into the field, is called ARFID, avoidant restrictive food intake disorder. Now, most people that know how to treat, well, I don't know if this is true. Like, I know how to treat ARFID. A lot of people I know that are good experts in eating disorders know how to treat ARFID. Most eating disorder programs have a way to treat ARFID. But I don't know if all eating disorder professionals know how, so make sure you know who you're working with. But ARFID is I would say in ARFID there's not overlap into all the other eating disorders. This is quite a distinct eating disorder. The only thing it has in common is that people will limit the types or amount of foods eaten. But they typically don't have a distorted body image or concerns about their weight. They may have lost weight from it's like picky eating in a way. It typically starts like as a childhood onset. It could be related to autism spectrum disorder. A lot of the things in ARFID, it could be like avoiding certain textures of food, or certain qualities of food that they like and don't like. Um, they might have a lack of appetite, lack of interest in food. Sadly, there's a lot of abdominal pain and upset stomach that has to be medically managed to help people be able to overcome ARFID. And this, I've never seen this written anywhere, but I've noticed that sometimes swallowing issues can be present in ARFID. So, you could even work with, in addition to like maybe a therapist and a dietitian, you could even work with a professional that knows about swallowing, like a speech therapist, because just even to make sure someone has the strength and feels comfortable with swallowing. I have had some clients that have had ARFID or like look like an anorexia picture, and they had dealt with a choking incident in the past that started this. So it's like a choking occurs, and we know that things related to like poisoning or choking, the learning that occurs in the brain is very hardwired to avoid choking and avoid being poisoned. So when we learn, like, when you had food poisoning, and that's actually another thing that I've seen happen before people develop an eating disorder, is you could get like a really bad case of food poisoning and then be so scared about throwing up or so scared to eat, or it's hard not to throw up. Like, these physiological, physical things that happen can be very interconnected into the disorder. And, I guess like keep that in mind. I think eating disorders are, of all the mental health issues, eating disorders have a lot of physiological connections with their presentation. Next slide. So, eating disorders have the highest death rate of any psychiatric illness. One reason is because of so many physical effects of malnutrition. Every system of the body is affected, and there is a high suicide rate in anorexia and bulimia, especially with anorexia. And I believe that the high suicide rate, just talking to a lot of people dealing with it, talking to people who call into ANAD, people feel really sad and hopeless. And because eating disorders are long term, they can be long term. And now, if you just got an eating disorder, or if your kid just got an eating disorder, like, go fast, try to recover, get out of this as quickly as possible. But sometimes it does have, it is, even if you go really fast, it's probably going to take a few months and have a long duration to recover. But I mean, ANAD's message is, please don't give up. Please keep working on recovery, because we have a giant recovery community of people that did overcome eating disorders. And I know many, 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 many people that overcame eating disorders, but every person probably has times during their attempts at recovery that they didn't think they could recover, and they might feel hopeless. So we really have to take it seriously and watch out for, for suicide, for suicidal thoughts to come in, and help people feel hopeful. That's why one thing we do in our community is try to get people who are recovered out there so others can see, like, wow, people can recover, people did recover, and then that will help people stay motivated for their own recovery journey. One of the biggest things we worry about with eating disorders are cardiovascular effects. We sometimes see people that are very young, like middle school, high school. They could be like really athletic, but you're going to see they're going to have problems in their heart, even already, just measured by an EKG, just in their electrolytes. And so it's pretty scary. And so it's really important to take it very seriously and make sure there's medical monitoring that occurred if you are dealing with an eating disorder. Bone loss is something that happens, especially when the skeleton is still developing in a young person who gets an eating disorder, or also during pregnancy, it could have devastating effects. Again, not if you used to have an eating disorder, but because if you would be pregnant now, go ahead and eat the best you can now, because that's going to really, really help you. Don't give up. Sometimes people feel like, well, I already ruined it, and so now there's no need to get well. The body will be as resilient as it can be. So, try and get good nutrition as soon as you can. Cognitive effects happen, attention issues, decision making, memory, all these can reverse with better nutrition. And eating disorders, people have a lot of gastrointestinal issues. Some of them may precede the eating disorder, but some of them may be because of messed up eating. So, like, people feel really bloated, pain in their stomach, they get really full quickly, they feel nauseous, they say a lot, I feel too full. Sometimes in the eating disorder programs, we have little jokes about a lot of gas people are having when they're very shut down in their nutrition, and then they start eating again. They get like real constipated, and it's a hard thing to go through, but we laugh, and we try and give a lot of support and give a lot of love about it, because it's just normal. It's just the normal effects, and it'll resolve too. And sometimes it resolves, but also sometimes we can do things. There's medicines that could help the stomach empty a little faster. There's medicines that help with gas. We can do things with fiber to help with constipation, although don't overload fiber, because then you can get more constipated. So make sure you have someone that knows about it helping you with it. Next slide. So eating disorders are potentially severe, complex, and life-threatening. I mentioned they have the highest mortality of any mental health disorder. And I thought, since you guys are NAMI, that I should talk about some other mental illnesses and how they match up with eating disorders, because you probably know it's called comorbidity when you have two things at the same time. And you could even have more than two. It's not uncommon for someone, if I meet them and they have an eating disorder, that they have depression, that they have anxiety, that they have at least some features of obsessive compulsive disorder. So let's go through some of the things that are likely to co-occur with an eating disorder. 62% of people with eating disorders say they also have anxiety. I've It's even higher than it's not on this slide, it's on the next slide, but it's even higher the number of people who have social anxiety. And that could be like a precipitating factor. Someone being in middle school, being in high school, and just all of a sudden getting super socially overwhelmed and don't know how to manage it. I think it's even up to like 90% of people with anorexia and bulimia have some, and binge eating, have some kind of social anxiety. 52% also have mood disorders, depression. 27% deal with substance abuse. 27% deal with post-traumatic stress disorder. Next slide. Now, this one, they did the research a little bit differently. They talked with people. They did a research on people that had schizophrenia. They found that 12% of those people also had an eating disorder. So there's a lot of overlap there. People with eating disorders, when they surveyed them, about 22% of them had autism spectrum disorder. And some other issues that commonly exist with eating disorders, I mentioned social anxiety, bipolar disorder, um, personality disorders, and non-suicidal self-harm. Next slide. So when I was talking about the comorbidity, just keep in mind that, that becomes an issue in treatment because you're treating, like, let's say that, and this sometimes happens on a general psych unit. Like, let's say that somebody has to go in the hospital for depression because they were not feeling safe. They went to a general psych unit and they had depression. Well, what if they also had an eating disorder? A lot of general psych don't have an eating disorder track. They don't have a way of managing that. So I know sometimes, like if I have a client of mine that goes into the hospital for depression, but they also have an eating disorder, they like that gets missed. So then they're like maybe happy about it, maybe sad about it, but they didn't get support for eating when they were in the hospital. So if someone's in a mindset that they're not really ready to recover, then they'll feel like, wow, I didn't have to eat the whole time. But of course, there's also a great sadness in that because eating is really needed. So, because then how are you going to get better from your depression if you're super starving? That's just going to be depressing in and of itself. So anyway, what I'm trying to say is these comorbidities, it's important to treat like everything someone has that they're dealing with. You don't want to skip any of them. Um, Eating disorder onset can begin at any age. It could affect any gender or race or age. They most often emerge in adolescence, including late adolescence. Like, some people, it could start when you go to college because now you're away from home. And um, sometimes athletes might be more likely to struggle with eating disorders because they already have so much pressure to perform, and their body is their instrument in so many sports. And so that's something they try to manage, a way to be really successful in their sport, but sometimes it could run down the body and hurt them. Especially athletes, you might see if they're getting their body fat percentage testing, then they'll be worried about getting their body fat percentage testing, and they have pressure for it to go down. So then they'll really try and cut out fat as much as they can. But then this can lose, for females, it could cause them to lose their menstruation. And for male athletes, they could get lower testosterone as well. So, kind of watch out for restricting fats in athletics. So many athletes find that they got this advice to restrict fats, but then when they did, not only did they feel terrible, sometimes their hair would fall out, their skin would be really dry and flaky, but you know what else? They also got worse in their sport. Here they are trying to do things to get better in their sport, but they backfire because, I don't know why people think malnutrition is like so awesome and they like revere it. I'm not saying the athletes, I'm saying the people teaching them what to do. And restricting fat too much is never, it's always gonna backfire. Um, Okay, so they impact people across the entire lifespan. Most of the people in the ANAD community are adults or even older adults, but usually their eating disorder started when they were younger. And all are welcome to our community. Eating disorders tend to be a long-term illness, and recovery is a marathon, not a sprint. So I have seen people have an eating disorder and everyone thinks like, oh, you now we found out you had, first of all, okay, there's all kinds of stuff, right? Maybe people don't even believe they have an eating disorder. Maybe they don't think it's that serious. Maybe they do think it's really serious, but then everyone's like, okay, so we've identified the eating disorder, so eat this now and get better now. And that's probably one of the biggest frustrations in eating disorders. And it probably goes across all mental health issues, right? Like, let's say you're really depressed and then you get identified with depression, and then everyone goes, okay, well, it's time to not be depressed now. Don't be depressed anymore. And when you're the person struggling with depression or you're struggling with an eating disorder, logic and reasoning just isn't the only thing you need to figure out. So much of the disorders are genetic, and so much of the disorders, they need a lot of professional health, and they take longer to treat than, than family members would like, or they would like, or that someone would think or expect. And so these are illnesses that we really have to respect the way they can, be part of someone's life for quite a long time. And then so we know everyone's doing the best we can, and that's why I say it's a marathon, not a sprint, because we have to be ready to like go the distance, not just like get frustrated and give up or get mad at that person for having it, but saying this is an illness, this happens to people, it's not a choice. And so people have to be like, I mean, I would say like people have to be loved and cared about and respected while they're going through this. And something I always try to teach with eating disorders to families is that, so people, let's say you have an eating disorder and you won't eat the way that people want you to eat, then people get really mad at you sometimes. And I think the reason they get mad is because they think it's a choice, and they think you're just doing a bad behavior and they want to like punish a bad behavior. So I want to let everyone know that if you see any eating disorder behaviors, they are fear. They're not like I don't want to do it, I won't do it. I'm afraid to do it. And that helps trigger you to have parenting behaviors that are really powerful and helpful. If you see fear, you don't want to bring punishment, you want to bring like helping someone feel better, like help them feel less afraid, like tell them it's okay. And know that just because you say it's okay doesn't mean they feel fine. It's going to be like a way that, you help them, but it's not like foolproof. It's not 100%, but that's the best A game you can bring to the situation, is helping the person in your life know that you understand, and that they're afraid, and please try. Okay, next slide. So some populations, ANAD has support groups for the BIPOC community, LGBTQ community. We're really excited. We have groups for siblings of people with eating disorders. We found that's a really neglected group that is greatly affected by their siblings' eating disorder, and for caregivers as well. Anorexia has the reputation of just young white girls have this, but that's not the case. Eating disorders can happen to anyone. They're not a choice. And eating disorders might be irrational, but in some ways they're very rational. If you think about the pressure in our society to be thin, well, then don't be fat. People realize like, I've got to be thin, I've got to diet, I've got to get a boyfriend, I want to be popular, and they want to get their body to be an acceptable way where they'll get love and acceptance. And so, in a way, there's a piece of eating disorders, if you look at it, that's actually quite rational of thinking, that I think it's important to support and love a person and know that they're, we live, I mean, don't we live in a cruel world? All right, now I don't recall exactly where my slide is, but when my next slide might be my little video. Let's see. Okay, after this one. So the pressure to be thin, you all know, right? It's in the media. Not only is it in the media, but now you can even get shamed to be thin from your doctor when you go. They always look at your BMI and they're like, whoa, aren't you getting too fat? And, if you think about trying to give feedback to people and tell them they're too fat, what are they supposed to do about it? So now you tell even a kid, like, oh, you're fat. So then the kid is like crying, like, well, what should I do? And the mom is crying. She doesn't know what to do. So then they try things like the paleo diet and the keto diet, and things that are, obviously those are having a lot of high protein. They're not having carbs. And there's like a great fear of carbs that's in our country and in the medical community, especially bringing it down. And of course, like I said, athletes learn to keep going even if they're tired or hurt. I guess this is the time I could talk a little bit about advocacy. I know even, when I was 27, I talked earlier, and I was like this young professional, and I did an an eating disorder presentation, which I guess was accurate, but the people that were there said that's not how I feel about it. So I learned so much from them. Well, that's a year I also went to the doctor. And the weight I was at the time was probably like the lowest weight I could be, like without really trying. And, I worked out a lot and ate well, and I was super healthy. I had low blood pressure. I had, nothing was wrong with me. And I go to the doctor and she said to me, you need to lose 5 pounds. Now, okay, luckily I don't have issues with that. I'm an advocate. I'm highly educated about it. And she said, you need to lose 5 pounds. And I said, I'm not going to lose 5 pounds. If you try to tell me to lose 5 pounds, you're going to harm my health. You're supposed to do something positive for my health, not hurt me. And so I'm telling you that story to tell you, like, we do have to be advocates for our children. We have to be advocates for each other and for ourselves. There's a study coming that, whatever, maybe 15 years ago, came out of the UK. I'm sure there's plenty of studies that also support this, that women were avoiding going to the doctor in this one study because they don't want to be shamed for their body and they don't want to be shamed for being fat. So it just really kind of makes you think, I think it's really a strong issue in the medical community. And I know when I've done lots of advocacy about this, and sometimes, a few people find it really helpful, but some people get really angry with me and they're like, how dare you? You're causing all these people to be unhealthy because they're going to be fat. And, there's this movement called health at every size. Health at every size is be whatever size you are and be as healthy as you can in that size, in that body. So, when we do small things, a lot of research shows that, the reason the medical community makes this big deal about thinness is that, obviously there is metabolic syndrome and there are, things that occur when someone is at a higher weight. But guess what? If you lose 5% of body weight or 3% of body weight, all those numbers improve. Blood sugar, blood pressure, electrolytes, they all improve. So I don't know why they keep telling us like you have to be in this ideal weight when people can just be supported to, it's not even about weight loss. Like try to do more walking if you can walk, or swimming, or try to do, more physical activity. Try to work on binge eating if someone's dealing with binge eating or emotional eating, or eat more frequently throughout the day. Get the food pyramid out. I mean, this is what, in my opinion, this is what doctors should be telling us and teaching us. They should be getting the food pyramid out. They should be they shouldn't just be like, hey, guess what? Lose weight. Well, how am I supposed to know how much weight to lose? How am I supposed to know how to do it? How do I know how to do it in a healthy way? So anyway, this is really important to me. So thank you for letting me share about this pressure to be thin and how it affects us. Okay, so we'll see in the next, I think the next slide. Bree, can you go to the next slide? Okay, it's not. So why don't we do it since I keep referring to it? Can you go to the next slide? And then we'll go, okay. So this next slide, Bree's going to press play in a minute, and then you're going to see a little something about prejudice against people for being overweight. And there was a show, a lot of people don't know about it if you're really young, but there was a TV show called The Biggest Loser, and it was in America. When I wrote my book, Shut Up Skinny Bitches, that was like in 2008 or 2010, and the show was pretty big. And this clip is, there was a guy named Bob, and he was a trainer, and it's Bob. So I want you to watch this clip because Bob has issues. Bob is the trainer, and so he gets on a really kind of a high horse, and like he thinks so. I don't see him on a treadmill. He's standing on the side and he's criticizing other people while they go on the treadmill. So why don't we watch this clip and see a little bit about people's attitude and prejudice about overweight? Would you play it, Bree?
Yeah, let me know if you can't hear it, and I'll just...
Okay.
We have a 30-second sprint. 6.5, Joelle. Yes. One more time. That's right.
Trust the process.
Change forever. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. That's it. Good. Everybody looks good. Do not be sloppy. Finish this strong, Joelle. No, Joelle, don't do it. Don't do it. Dig, Joelle. Dig. 10. Joelle. 4, 3, 2, 1. What the? Joelle? Every single time. It's 20 seconds. giving you. No, you're not. You stop at 20 seconds every time. Every time. What is it? I'm giving you my best. No, you're not. You stop at 20 seconds every single time. What is it? Because I've got 6 other people here that want to be here that keep pushing outside of the box. What is it? I'm pushing. No, you're not. Don't say it. Don't say you're pushing, because you're not. You're stopping every single time. And now stop. And then never left. Every single time. You asked for 6 No, then do it. Do it now. Okay? Everyone goes for 30 seconds. You don't come off for 30 seconds, okay? That's all I'm asking. Just do that. God! I have never thought about that. Never on that. Never.
Hey, Bree, you could stop it. Thank you. I mean, you get the point, everybody, right? Like, I mean, last time I spoke in a high school a couple months ago, and I'm crying because all the kids were crying. I didn't realize they hadn't seen this show before, and they were so upset. And I feel really upset because, you see that he's entitled to put her down and make fun of her because she's a heavier weight than him. And something ironic, okay? Guess which one of those two had a heart attack within the year after that was filmed? Not her. So there's something about hostility, rage, anger, arrogance that can also be bad on our hearts. But how come my doctor doesn't ask me, have you been arrogant lately? Have you been excessively angry? Have you been bitter? Like all these things. And actually, I can pull up studies and show you that it is bad for people's heart when they are angry and hostile and super unhappy. So, okay, well, thank you for watching this clip. I know some younger people never even heard of The Biggest Loser, but those of us that are a bit older, this was like a show that was on weekly. And it was like a race to see who could, lose the most weight. So Bree, would you go back to the previous slide for me, please? Okay. There's another study that's related to this that I wanted to share with you. And a lot of studies get criticized that correlation doesn't equal causation. So you may have heard, like, just because 2 things happen at the same time doesn't mean one caused the other. But this is a longitudinal study by Diane Newmark Steiner from University of Minnesota, and she's actually at Harvard now doing help with people with body image, and she runs a whole center about it there. But she started by looking at girls and boys, and she followed them over time. So she found out that some boys and girls, so maybe like 12-year-olds or so, 11, 12, 13, there was a time that they went on a diet. And then she followed those kids, and they gained 20 more pounds than other children and were more likely to develop an eating disorder. So you could see how, like, why this fits in with the prejudice. Because let's say this kid went to the doctor and they were told you need to lose weight. I mean, what do you do when you need to lose weight? You go on a diet. So then they went on a diet. Thanks a lot. Now they gained 20 more pounds. Why did they gain 20 more pounds? A few reasons. One is they may have developed some binge eating that happens as a result of dieting sometimes, actually pretty commonly. Their metabolism slows down. Actually, The Biggest Loser contestants participated in some studies, and scientists did find how much that's extreme weight loss decreased people's metabolism and made it so hard for them to eat. Like, because with Biggest Loser, they did extreme dieting and extreme physical activity. And when they were done with the show, when they tried to do a little bit more normal, like not as severe restricting of dieting and not as severe amounts of activity, they ended up, their metabolisms were ruined. They were so slow that they would gain weight really easily. So these are factors that we got to think about, And one thing I want to ask everybody, if you ever notice people who you don't like what they weigh or you think they're overweight, try to be aware of the thoughts you have and try to look at that inner bully inside of you, that how you look at yourself and put yourself down for your weight, and just try to like be kind and more compassionate. If we were more kind and more compassionate toward people with their weights, we'd have a better world, and also we'd have less eating disorders. So the third reason why the boys and girls who gained more weight than other children was because they felt too exhausted to work out, especially boys. Boys have really high needs for food when they're growing up because their metabolism like is really, really fast. They're trying to grow and they tend to be a bit taller, so they really need more food. So boys to diet during their teenage years is really, just can be very destructive to them. Okay, so now you can skip 2 slides, Bree, if you would. Okay. So let's talk a bit about recovery and treatment now. Recovery is hard, and people can have a lot of hopeless and helpless feelings during recovery. There's so much fear, there's so much obsessive thinking, so it's really a struggle to change. And I don't know anybody that knows a lot about OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder. Some people have believed that anorexia is just a kind of obsessive compulsive disorder. Thoughts tend to repeat themselves. They tend to be, you have compulsions that you don't just, it just doesn't work to say, okay, don't do that. You don't need to do that. It feels like very fearful and a strong drive to do it. So, if you know anything about OCD, try to apply that to this because it becomes very hard for people to break out of these behaviors. So if you think about it, if I'm afraid to gain weight, my treatment is, if I'm underweight, my treatment is I have to gain weight. Or if I'm afraid of eating, now my treatment is you make me eat. So guess what? People don't like it. It makes sense. And up to 75% of people with eating disorders are not even accessing treatment. Could be because treatment's super expensive. It's hard to find good quality treatment. Also, the treatment is not something that they like. And then I think if you look at with NAMI, many people with mental health disorders are not accessing the treatment that they need. So eating disorders are similar to that. Next slide. So eating disorders actually impact motivation for treatment because, like I said, if the treatment is something like I have to eat a bunch of food or I have to gain weight, no thanks. I'm scared of that. So I might try to avoid that. Or also, there's something about eating disorders that tend to make people be in denial. Like they're like, my issue's not that bad, or so motivation is definitely an issue in treatment. And then people on the issue of binge eating is really, really difficult to stop. People have a really hard time with that. And some people that binge eat, let's say they say, okay, I'm not going to binge tonight, but they keep dieting. And when you're dieting a lot and restricting food, it becomes really hard. It kicks you right back in the cycle of binging later because the more I restrict food, the more I'm set up to binge. So that's something people really battle with because if they binge, they're like, okay, tomorrow I'm not going to eat, or tomorrow I'm going to eat very little. But then inside them, they're like, it's life, we need food to survive. So you are fighting a strong enemy if you think you're not going to eat. Um, so people that deal with binge eating, it's very it's kind of confusing because we tell people, okay, I don't want you to diet. And they're like, but I need to diet. I've gained weight. And we're like, well, we want to just kind of come into a whole new way of eating really nutritiously, like real food pyramid-ish. Make sure we get enough carbs and fats and proteins throughout the day to try to get a really good nutrition, a really good metabolism, and that's going to protect against binge eating. Another thing, people will need to kind of find out emotional eating, what feelings are connected to eating. So sometimes people might be lonely, they might be depressed. I had mentioned that earlier. And then we kind of want to work on separating out the different feelings from the eating. okay, if you're feeling lonely, eating is not going to solve it. What else can we do that will help you feel less lonely? So trying to like come up with problem solving and dealing with the emotions without eating and separating that, and as well as restricting. Some people restricting is really good at numbing feelings. So when you're not restricting, it's going to make you have more feelings, and that might be really hard for some people. And then they're like, "No, thanks, I don't want to. I don't want to eat this because I'm going to have all these feelings." So having learning skills to cope with feelings and deal with them is really helpful. It's a big part of recovery. And I put on the bottom here, may need inpatient or residential to practice new eating behaviors. So, let's say I have good intentions and you set me off with a meal plan of like what I can eat, and we talk about different coping. But what if my eating disorder is just too strong for me? I have every good intention in the world. I'm trying to recover. I'm trying to eat the way you say, and I cannot do it. That's why these hospital programs exist, because inpatient and residential are levels of care where you can go and get 24-hour assistance. Inpatient usually is when someone's really not doing well medically. Maybe their weight's quite low or their electrolytes are off. We do inpatient so we can do a lot more medical monitoring and make sure someone gets in a medically stable situation. Um, and then residential. So they kind of developed a residential level of care because, they kind of consider it day hospital with housing. Because, I mean, I'm just talking about insurance companies for billing reasons didn't want to pay the high prices of an inpatient hospital stay. And it's actually not a bad thing because it turned out good, because residential means you stay overnight at somewhere, either like a location nearby a hospital, you participate in programming, but you get support at night. So you're not going to binge because there's no food there for you to binge, or you can't go anywhere. So it's not like you're inpatient, but you're also in residential where you have support from other people that are also going through the same thing. So those are two levels of care that people may need if they don't find success in outpatient treatment. Next slide. Okay, so here's some treatment issues. Treatment issues, it's really important to do a treatment team approach. Therapy is good, but what if, it's funny, we have a joke like, well, can I just talk about stuff and not eat anything, not change my eating? Because changing the eating is the hard part, even though talking about the feelings is the hard part too. But obviously for nutrition, for recovery from eating disorders, you have to do therapy and you have to do nutrition. It's important to have a psychiatrist on your team and medical monitoring. Some psychiatrists are pretty good at medical monitoring, or you may have like your primary care do the medical monitoring, or whoever who helps somehow get some medical monitoring as you work on recovery. One of the things that's vulnerable for people's health is if you're starting out more on the underweight side, or you're really restrictive with your eating, and then you start working on goals and plans for outpatient work, all of a sudden people could go into this condition called hyperburn. And when you go in hyperburn, that's when your metabolism starts flying. That's a very dangerous time because you could lose a lot of weight. And that's why like you have to be somewhere where they have to be able to help you stop the hyperburn by eating more fast enough. And also they have to check medically to make sure you're not in any dangerous situation because of hyperburn, just because your body's going through all these metabolic changes. It's hard on your whole body. I talked about the levels of care. Day hospital is another level where, you go to the hospital maybe for breakfast and lunch, but you're home for the rest of dinner and the rest of the time. Intensive outpatient means like it's just not just once a week in the office of the therapist, but more than once a week. And then medication. There's no medication that's specifically for eating disorders, but most people use psych meds to address symptoms of depression, anxiety, OCD, mood instability, and helping with cravings. So, there's not like a pill for anorexia, but there's a lot of meds that you could use creatively. Since there's so much comorbidity anyway, it helps alleviate different symptoms so people can make progress with their recovery. Next slide. So, some treatment goals are restore adequate nutrition. Even if someone's binge eating, they might have poor nutrition. They might like restrict a lot during the day and they might binge at night. And so they still have to restore adequate nutrition, even regardless of what the weight is. Bring weight to a healthful level as much as possible. Stabilize exercise. So, a lot of people might be avoiding activity at all, or they might be working out too much. So, we want to get that in the optimal place. And we want to work to stop binging behaviors with people. Next slide. So let's talk about some effective therapy. Talk therapy has a lot to do with problem solving, separating food and restriction from feelings. I didn't put this in here, but like couples therapy, family therapy, look at your life, what's going wrong, straighten it out. It helps you with your recovery from food issues. There's a type of cognitive therapy called cognitive behavioral therapy, E for eating disorders. That's very specific ways of thinking about food and turning around eating disorder thoughts and behaviors. Family-based therapy is really important. Anybody that is has parents that can help them, family-based therapy can be really effective because it's like the whole family comes together and supports the individual with an eating disorder. And a lot of times, family-based therapy can even help people avoid a hospitalization because you're able to maybe do things with the support at home that you don't even need to go into a hospital. I mean, and sometimes that really does work. They really say family-based therapy is the gold standard in eating disorder treatment for younger folks. One thing I have to say, like, just kind of be careful with it. Get like a really good therapist and team about it because sometimes with family-based therapy, clients might there might become a control issue that develops because the parents are like, you have to eat this, you have to eat this, otherwise you're punished. And then it can be really hard on the relationship. So we have to be really careful to maintain a really positive relationship through that. And also, if I do family therapy with families, I also want to make sure after the family-based therapy that we also do work to help the relationship with the parents, and we also help the person gain, because family-based therapy is kind of like uh, you don't have to worry about what to weigh, you don't have to worry about what to eat. We're just going to tell you, we're going to give it to you, and you have to do it. And it's good, it's really effective. But we have to make sure that people are able to have skills on their own to make those good food choices and feel comfortable with their bodies. So that's something that we also recommend including in family-based therapy. So a lot of you guys might be familiar with DBT, dialectical behavior therapy, therapy to help people manage strong emotions. That's really helpful in eating disorders because I was saying we're going to not use food to handle the emotions or restricting to handle the emotions, but we're going to gain skills in managing and tolerating these emotions. Acceptance commitment therapy and motivational interviewing help with issues of like, I'm not sure if I want to get well. I don't know if I have a problem. That can be really helpful. And also acceptance commitment helps people find out like what are the things and values important to them, right? So if I'm your therapist, maybe my value is you have to gain 30 pounds, but maybe that's not your value. Maybe you're like, that's not why I'm coming to therapy. So we kind of work it out, like we would kind of work it out like, okay, what's your value? What do you want to work on in therapy? What's important to you? And then even to try to work on, okay, well, like, here's why, like, can you even starting off with a little bit of weight gain or something to try to get in a safer, more stable place medically and cognitively. And then nutrition therapy, look up the food pyramid. Remember your old friend, the food pyramid. And then managing carbs and fats and proteins. I had mentioned fats are something that especially athletes might shy away from, but a lot of people might shy away from them. Fats are really important in the diet. We call fat the satiety nutrient because it helps you feel more full. So when you avoid fats, you're just kind of constantly hungry. And somehow over the years, carbs have gotten like a really bad reputation. Well, I know because the medical community really loves paleo and keto. Now, I know that some people use keto for like some medical treatments, and they say it can be effective in mental health treatment, just like sometimes people say going gluten free is helpful for that. So I don't really want to get into, I can't really get into a whole, conflict about that. But I will say if there's ways to recover without going keto for eating disorders, like that would be good because then you can get to a really good relationship with food and include all the food groups. People that restrict carbs a lot tend to be pretty hungry. So, we like people to incorporate carbs into their diets and not be totally fearful of them or demonize them. Okay, do I have another slide on here? Or is that the end?
Nope, that is the end.
Okay, well, thank you guys for hearing me talk. Couldn't see you, but felt your beautiful energy. So
Thank you
thank
so
you.
much.
Yeah, thank you guys for being here. And I tried to be comprehensive, but I would love to know if anybody has any questions they could help with.
Yeah, that was awesome. It was so informative and funny at times. And just, that was a very good presentation. I really, really appreciate that. We do have a question.
Okay.
So let me get that up for you. It says, can you talk about using injections to lose weight, such as, I'm going to butcher this, Wegovy?
Oh, Wegovy, or there's
Yeah.
Manjaro, there's
Sorry.
Wegovy, there's Ozempic. Well, these are pretty new,
Mhm.
they're pretty new. And I mean, I think there's ways that that docs are using them that they're healthful for people, someone, if someone has like type 2 diabetes and they're very they're not well and their sugars are really not doing well. I've seen these medicines do really miraculous things. I mean, I'm not against them. I think sometimes you could go Hollywood with them and use them like someone like in the 80s, someone would use diet pills or something. Well, now we have a much more powerful weapon to use. I think it would be easy in those circumstances for those medicines to just feed into these cultural issues that we're trying to fight against, where like everyone has to be thin. I think they can be used in very hurtful ways, especially I know there's a lot of news coming out in these investigations that people are using not even the formulated versions of these meds. They're using like pirate ones. And I mean, that's kind of scary. That's scary for, anything like people using fentanyl instead of what their doctor prescribes. I think that, well, but I know some doctors are also quacks and using, counterfeit meds like this. So I definitely think there's possibility of danger and we have to look out for it, but I don't have a blanket belief that it should never be used because I've actually seen it change people's lives. It's kind of like what I was saying earlier, like if let's say if someone is very very considered very very overweight and so they're told you're overweight, oh my god, this is a tragedy, and then they're told to like lose weight. Well, all they need to lose are like a few pounds, and that's what some of these medicines actually do. They'll take a few pounds off by using them, and the person can walk better and they can see better, and it's just there's a lot of benefits that can happen. I think there is some possibility that there's probably some research being done right now on possibly using Mounjaro type medicine for binge eating because it's possible it could reduce cravings for people and help them gain control over their eating disorder. So that's a way it may be being able to be used in the future in a positive way for a group that does sometimes feel pretty hopeless and pretty stuck. So
Yeah,
that's what
absolutely.
I know about that.
There was a follow-up too with that, and this individual was wondering how medications or injections like that would impact with other disorders like depression, anxiety, things of that nature.
So, I mean, I'm not a physician, so I don't know everything, but I do tend to do a lot of research in the field. And I've actually seen some studies come out that say these actually can, if they're used properly with the right doses, and the lower doses, they can be a bit helpful for alleviating some depression. I think that's a preliminary finding. So I didn't see it being causing like more severe depression or anything like that. And I've seen some research that shows it's positive toward many areas in the body for medical health, toward being positive and helpful for it.
Huh.
So, yeah, so I think there's danger, there's caution, we have to be careful, but there's probably uses of this med that can be beneficial. And of course, if someone had an eating disorder, they could go crazy with it and they could get hurt. If they could access it, in that way, it could help someone, nefariously wanting to be a super low body weight and take it. So, we have to be careful with it, but especially because there's these weird rogue formulations available. I think if it was just get the one from the store, from the pharmacy, the doctor tells you what dose to take, I think there is some possible promise in that.
Mm. Thank you very much. Let's see. Next question says, great caring intro to subject. Is the material in a format that I can receive a copy? Also joined a few minutes late and didn't receive the speaker info, but I would like that too. Thank you very much. Is it possible if we send along your PowerPoint to the people who have registered?
Sure, that's okay with me. I wrote it for you guys.
Thank you so much. That's very kind. Okay, next question says, for parents of an anorexic child, please describe some bad meal experiences and what constitutes good meal experiences, guiding principles for parents. Thanks.
So, I can actually send you some really cute videos about that are instructive that you could use. And there's also a book. The author is Eva Mosby. I'll send you that book as well. Bree, could you send me a note after this reminding me what I have to get? So, I mean, obviously, bad meal experience, right? Everyone's crying, someone's not eating, everyone's upset. So, yeah, there's plenty, there's plenty of bad eating. There's plenty of bad family meals along the way to recovery. So the more, I mean, I guess I would say good positive experiences are things like, you know, what, you guys, if your parents and your child has an eating disorder, you got to bring out the most patience that God could give you, that you never even knew you had that much patience. It's like you can't even, the amount of patience you need is beyond. So try to pray for patience, try to like figure out, how can I be patient, how can I take the time for this, because it's really easy to get triggered, to become punitive, to be like pissed off, to be mad, to be like really angry, and then I mean, and even it's like, this is ruining our marriage, this is ruining our lives. I guess that would be a bad family meal, right? So the more that you can recognize that, that's why I talked earlier about the idea, like, please try to recognize that fear. So first of all, there's that fear there that you want to love and respect, and not be like, I'm gonna make you, obviously you're not saying I'm gonna make you do this like really mean and everything, but like, so you want to set yourself up to be like, okay, here's what we're gonna have. It's really important for you to have this. And I'll stay with you. We're all having it. Now that's one thing. I've had so many moms tell me, that they gained like 20 pounds trying to help their kid recover from an eating disorder, but they all said it's worth it because
Right.
you kind of have to eat what they're eating. And, you know, the
Right.
moms are like, but I don't want to eat that. That's not good for my body. That's not good for my medical needs. But some kind of way that if we're all eating the same thing, then everybody feels safe. Now, obviously, right, say your kid has to be on like 3,000 calories because they're, you know, very underweight, and that's what the doctor gave, the dietitian gave. Obviously, you don't have to eat the 3,000 calories, but probably try to eat some of all those food groups that they're having, and just do a lot of loving redirection. So if they're like, well, how come you don't have to have that? You can be like, I am having that. Let's not worry about what I'm having. We're here to support you. And a lot of people describe that distraction is really powerful for helping with recovery. So, like, if there's a way you guys can say, you know, let's get through our meal and then let's go for a walk, or let's play cards, or what do you want? Let's play video games, you know, and then do something together. So, you know, it's difficult because it's very time consuming, because basically family-based therapy, you're the hospital. So you're pretty tied down during that time. You're making sacrifices for your ill child. And if you can try to stay in a good mood and try to be loving, and everybody, you know, both parents, if it's a family with both parents, try to like be a team, love each other, stick through it, you can come out of it even more loving, even more understanding. And I would make that my goal. Make it like, we're going to come up, we're here for you no matter what. We're always going to be here for you. We're not mad at you. We have patience for you. And a lot of times, like, do it where, like, you know, have the meal in mind, and then if you can't finish the meal. Now, so this is the hard thing, right? Because a lot of family-based therapy is like really hard line. They'll be like, well, they have to eat the whole thing. Oh, really? How am I going to make them do that? Like, it's really unrealistic what's expected of the parents. And my big pet peeve is, well, take the phone away, take the phone away. That's, to me, like the stupidest. So and your therapist probably already told you that. I think it's a weak move. I think it's an amateur move. So you don't want to get punishing as much as you can. You just want to be loving. You just want to say, you know what, sweetheart, you've lost too much weight, and I'm never going to let you get fat. Don't worry, but you know, you don't have good judgment. Mom and dad have to do this for you. And so, like, just trying to make those family meals loving, positive, and you know what, your poor siblings of your child, right? So you'll need to like have talks with them, walks. It's really going to be challenging for you as a family, but I mean, it can cause you to have an even more loving family than you ever had. You know, Mother Teresa called the child with a disability the teacher of love. And that opportunity is there for you, but it does suck. but the opportunity is there. So anyway, I hope I answered your question, and I'll send a couple of resources that are really good.
That was really well said, and very, very good advice. Yeah, you know, approaching it as a fear versus something that, you know, is a punishment or worth a punishment. That's big. And I think you can utilize that in a lot of different aspects in people's lives, right? Even when it comes to mental health conditions or anything of that nature, you know, approaching it with that kindness and compassion really does go such a long way. I appreciate that advice. That was really good.
Yeah, can I say one more thing about that? I forgot to say that, like, let's say that the doc and the dietitian gave you like the meal plan, and let's say you're in the middle of dinner and you're like, okay, okay, there's no way, like, we're just not going to be able to do it. Then, you know, have like shakes, have protein shakes available to, like, you know, just take the pressure. It doesn't have to be perfect every day. And the more important value is to get the calories in more than the particular type of food. I mean, eventually you want someone to be eating what everyone's eating and totally normal. But if they're not there yet, oh my God, take a side road, do a shake, do a granola bar, you know, and you might have to do that for a little while. But, you know, like I said earlier, it's also going to preserve the family relationships. You don't want to, and because I really feel like family-based therapy, it's really, there's some providers that act like family-based therapy is like the only thing you can do, and they're pretty snobby about it. They'll be like, well, if you don't do family-based, you just do a bad job, you know. And family-based therapy is really hard to pull off, and it's tense between family and, it's hard on the siblings. No one's even paying attention to them. So, anyway, you don't have to be a perfectionist. Obviously, ideally, it would be great if they ate all the meals with the families. Maybe right now they eat like a little bit of what they can have and then have a shake to supplement. That's fine, and you can maybe meet. You don't always want to be talking about food 24/7. So
Mhm.
you could have like a family meeting on Sunday nights and even have your loved one like have some input. If see how they do. If you're like, do you want to have some input into the family meals this week? Are there certain things that you really like? Are there things that you really
Good.
don't want to have? I mean, if they go crazy and they're like, I won't have any, whatever, then be like, okay, you're not ready for, just tell us one thing you like or one thing you don't like. But that the more they can have a say in it, I feel like that's one thing about family-based therapy that I struggle with, is that there's many models of it that the child has like zero say.
Mm.
I think they can have a little, see how much say they can handle. Sometimes they can't have any say. Like sometimes people do family-based therapy and the loved one has to go to the hospital. I mean, that happens too. You do your best, and some anorexia is really, really tough.
Mhm.
So anyway, my heart goes out to you being, when you're a parent of someone going through an eating disorder and when you are the person going through the eating disorder. But I'll tell you what, when your child gets older, they're going to thank you
Yeah.
for saving their life,
Yeah.
getting their life back, helping them when they were at their most scared. So
Right.
hope everything will, don't give up, because like I said, it's a marathon, not a sprint.
Let me see. This one person said, great balance, practical approaches on getting to goals versus daily must-dos. Thank you again. That was
Thank you so much.
I have a question for you. Obviously at NAMI, one of our main goals is to destigmatize and normalize conversations surrounding mental health, in order for people to seek out help when they need to and feel comfortable doing that. So when it comes to eating disorders, how stigmatized do you feel that it is? And what are some things that we can do to normalize that conversation? I guess the reason why I asked is that 75% who don't get treatment, that number just really struck me. And especially, people are starting to get treatment at an older age, but you mentioned that this is very prevalent in youth and kids. And
Mhm.
so just thinking about what we can do to just make people feel safe and make people feel like this is something that we can talk about and should talk about. Do you have any suggestions on that?
I think a couple of things. The blaming people for having an eating disorder and the belief that it's a choice. I think those are very, um, there's a lot of hostility in that. And, imagine if you were someone that had an eating disorder and you were afraid of the things that you could do, like you're afraid to eat certain things, afraid of your weight. That's not really coming in a position of power. The position of the power you feel you have is like, I can restrict this food and I can be thin,
Mhm.
but that's not true power. So true power is like self-acceptance, self-love, nurturing your body, taking really good care of yourself. So trying to get from that shut down, fearful position in that feels powerful, and
Mhm.
then letting go of that into actual power. It's like, if I don't spend a certain amount of time thinking about food and weight and body image, what could I do? What could I do with my life? It's amazing to think about it. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross is a psychiatrist. She's kind of famous for her work on grief. She started like the first hospices and things like that. And but she wrote a chapter in a book once called "Don't Waste Your Life Trying to Lose 5 pounds."
Mm.
And so it's like how we can get caught up in, I'm not good enough, I'm not pretty enough, I'm not attractive enough, no one's going to like me. And especially if people get teased for their weight. So I
Right.
guess this is another factor about it. So first of all, trying to take the stigma away from eating disorders, that it's not like something to laugh at, it's not something to be ashamed of, it's not choices. And then
Right.
the other part of it is, I really strongly believe that part of eating disorder advocacy is advocating for people of all sizes and knowing that all bodies are good. And this includes the population of people with disability, because, that's body image too, having something different about your body. I told you about Diane Newmark Steiner and how she was at University of Minnesota, and now she's at Harvard. And when she works on body image, not only does she talk about body size, she talks about skin color, and she talks about hair. So like people with like more of afro hair or like bigger hair, they actually have prejudice against them. Just like if you're in a larger body, people could get prejudice for being too light skinned, too dark skinned, too pale. So these are all things where, the core issue is, are we a world that accepts people? That's the thing. Like people don't feel loved, accepted. They feel ashamed. They feel like they can't fit in. And so to me, I feel like it's our responsibility. The more we're aware and educated, the more we can come out fighting, make this world be a place where people don't have to hate themselves. They don't have to always feel wrong. And so I always say, like, there's bullies around us, but the one thing we can control is the bully inside of us. There's a bully inside me and you and everybody that's like judging people for their body and their hair and their skin and, doing all these attacks, even if you don't say it. And the best thing you can do is try to become aware, like, how am I talking to myself about others? And how am I talking about myself to myself? I mean, a lot of times when people work on recovery from an eating disorder, they actually, my dear friend Jenny Schaefer wrote a book called Life Without Ed. And it was about her recovery from her eating disorder. And she called her eating disorder Ed, because she said this voice of Ed talks to me constantly and tells me what to do and tells me I'm too fat. So she just wrote a second book. I think it's Talking Back to Ed. And I think she writes him a breakup letter and like just kind of works. So that's a way to, when you hear that voice, it's like an inner bully. It's attacking you. And you start to hear your other, like your real voice say, wait a minute, all these things I learned about that I'm too fat and I'm not good enough, they're all from my culture. It's like we were saying, acceptance and commitment therapy, right? That's not even my value. I don't even believe that people are better than others based on how thin they are, but yet I'm trapped in this life where I'm obsessed with, issues of weight. So I think it's definitely something, these are people, like even in the 1970s, when they started working with eating disorders, they were realizing there's a lot of cultural issues in here, social justice issues in here, feminist issues in here, that the more we become aware of them, we can ask ourselves, well, what's my value? Is my value that I think it's fine to make fun of people for their weight? Like, and I don't know what you guys thought about that video, but that video is like, when I first showed that in like the 2000s, like around 2010, if I traveled to colleges and I showed that video, people were pretty numb to it. They were like, yeah, this show is on TV. When I showed it 2 months ago, people were crying. I don't know how you guys took it, but it's pretty intense, the hatred that he has. And it was just a show. People are just eating popcorn, watching TV, like pretending that he's not, hostile and racist and whatever he was, it was, I think it's, but I like to show it because it kind of shows you, we just see that every day. We see people bullying, people making fun of people for their weight. And I resent that the medical community buys into it by saying, well, that's right. If you're fat, you're going to have a heart attack. So you can't be fat. It's terrible. And so you better diet. And it kind of keeps the whole thing going. So you got to include the medical justification for the social injustice when you're thinking about it. And that's why it's a little ironic that Bob had a heart attack, because karma,
Right?
karma is operating
I remember
sometimes.
that show. That show was wild. Oh my goodness. And the other coach was just standing in the background and she was just like, oh, I have never seen him that mad. Like, it was no like interference or, hey, like,
wasn't it like a junior high? because
Yes.
the other kids, even though they're all adults, they were like on their
Yes.
cycles, on their treadmills, and they were looking like, oh, the teacher's
Yes.
mad, she's in trouble. But I do feel like this world is more educated. I
Yeah.
feel like some of you guys today, if you saw that happen and you were on the other treadmill or you were the other trainer, you would say, you stop it right now. You don't treat someone that way. And the other that really upsets me, because that's not her fitness level to run
Right.
not holding the treadmill, and that's what
Right.
he's punishing for her for, is she's running but she's holding on a little bit, like, hey, she's doing the best that she can, and she tried to say, I'm doing the best I can, and he kept saying, no, you're not, no, you're not.
Right.
I gave a speech once at a university. I used to travel and talk about this stuff, and one of the young people came up to me and she said, that clip you showed, she goes, that's how my dad treats me.
Oh my goodness.
So,
Breaking.
we have to think about, what, it's a rough world. We got to be there for each other. We got to be understanding. And eating disorders, we have to understand. People are just they're trying to figure out how to love their body, how to have a good relationship with food. The good thing about eating disorder treatment is you can gain a great relationship with food. That's very powerful. And like, if someone goes in treatment and works on all this stuff when they're younger, they'll go away to college. They're not the high risk people. They're the people that know how to manage food really well. They feel really comfortable how to eat, how to choose foods, so, and they got through all their body image stuff. They know how to maintain weight. So some
Yeah.
good things can come out of treatment, even though it's really, really hard.
Yeah. Knowledge is power, man. That's a really great observation for sure. One person did ask what the author you were talking about regarding Ed.
Oh, yes. Her name is Jenny. I think it's Jenni Schaefer. I think it's Schefer, something like that. But if you look up the book Life Without Ed, Jenni Schaefer is going to come up. And Jenni Schaefer also wrote a second book recently. So look up that one too. I think it's Talking Back to Ed. But she changed the field of eating disorders as a patient, because she actually she's hired, she works for treatment centers and she does retreats and things for people. So I don't know if she ever got her master's or whatever, but she doesn't even need to, because just by having good ideas and being a patient and understanding about it, she came up with this concept, Talking Back to Ed, and a lot of people use it, because it's like, because you have this eating disorder voice that's like, you can't eat that, you're too fat, like everyone hates you, whatever, and then you think it's you. And then she pointed out, that's not you, like, you're you. Talk back to that bully, tell him no. So it gets to be really empowering. At first people might be like, no, that is me, but after a while they realize, no, that's not me. This is something really cool that you can realize. Just because you have a thought doesn't mean that's what you think. You have to look at what your values are. A lot of your thoughts are conditioned into you. A lot of your thoughts are learned. So you might be thinking things and you're hearing your dialogue all day and you're like, oh, that's me. Oh my God, what if it's not you? What if it's negativity condition that you have learned? So that's why, and see this pencil and this paper, if you've got negative self-talk, write it down. Because when it's in your head swimming around, you can't really grab it. But when you write it down, then you can look at it and be like, oh my God, I can't believe. You can look what you say to yourself but then take a step back and go, do I think that? What if you're saying stuff you don't even think? They're not even your values. Or what if you think it's your value, but the more you look at it, you're like, well, I don't think that. How come I look at everybody else and I accept their body, but I don't accept mine? Or what if I don't accept anybody's body? I could do some work on that, because that's not making the world a better place. That's not good values for any of us. And you want to leave a good imprint on this earth, the best that you can. That's why we're here. We're here to make it better.
Right. Man, so well said. That is an exercise I am going to be practicing myself. Well,
I wouldn't say it if I didn't do it, right? We all have to, we live in a cruel world, and we all develop an inner bully that we got to figure out how to be our true selves.
Right, absolutely. And with being in this cruel world, it's just, why be cruel to yourself? You know, that is a really great strategy that I think would benefit a lot of people. So I'm happy that you shared
So
that.
important. Oh, and if you try to do that where you write the stuff down, some people like you could write down the things you're saying to yourself, and then you're thinking in your head, I can't do anything with this. It's too hard for me. Bring it to therapy. Bring
Yeah,
it to someone you trust, your best friend, your mom, like someone that you that would, you know, look at it with you and help you with it.
right.
So that's if it's
Yeah.
too negative and too big for you, you could still work on it. Just do it with some help.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you. This was awesome. I know I learned a lot. I'm very, very excited to share this. We do post the videos on our YouTube channel for people to access. If you did register and you were here today, I can send you a video recording of that as well, along with the PowerPoint, and then I will email you about the books and some of those resources for parents.
Yeah, and if you and I'm going to get a little email together for the person that wanted to know about the family-based therapy, and I'll send you a couple of videos and also the reference for that book. Her book is Eva Mosby, I think her name is, but I'll send it to you. She's great. She's great because again, she's not, I feel like some of the stuff about family-based that's written, it's like real snobby know-it-all. It's like, well, everyone can just do it. Like, oh my God, it's like so painful to try to do
Yeah.
and so difficult. And
Yeah.
no, you can't just take the phone away. It's not going to fix it.
Well,
So,
and you know, it's working on more than just your recovery. It's also working on relationship building and sustainability, and that is not easy in itself. And then you throw on top you know, a condition that makes it just so much more challenging. So I understand where you're coming from with that. Really great advice. Thank you so much.
yeah,
And
thank you guys so much for participating and being here. I really appreciate you know, your company, even though I couldn't see you. And hope to see, oh, can I
likewise.
tell you one more thing, you guys? ANAD is having a candlelight
Yeah.
vigil October 20th from 4 to 5 p.m. So go to anad.org. If you have an eating disorder or you know someone and you want to participate, it's going to be nationwide, but we're hosting it in Chicago in case you want to come in person. It's just going to be an hour, but people recover. And that's what I want you to know. And sometimes people feel like they can't recover, but they can. I mean, you know, don't give up. Keep working on it because it's really important to know that recovery happens and is possible.
Yeah. That sounds like such a great event, and good job for remembering. I'm so
Yeah,
happy
I
to
know.
mention
At the
that.
beginning, we said we were going to mention
Yeah,
it, but then I forgot.
exactly.
So thank
Exactly.
you guys, everyone, for participating. Bree, thank
Yeah,
you for having
likewise.
me.
Likewise. And if you are still on, just real quick, if you do log off, once you do log off, you will see just a really quick survey that will help us know how we can improve. It will also allow us to gather data that we need to continue providing our programs for free. So if you wouldn't mind, please, please, please filling that out. It shouldn't take you any more than 2 minutes. And then lastly, we do have our next program coming up on August 21st. So mark your calendars. We are going to have a few speakers come and talk a little bit more on nutrition and how it affects your mental health. So kind of a nice little part 2 of this webinar. And then if you did enjoy tonight's program and you are interested in our types of supports, please visit us at www.namiccns.org. Other than that, I have nothing. Thank you all so much
Bye,
for coming.
guys.
Have
Take
a very
care.
great night, and we will see you soon.
Good night.
Bye, everyone. Thank you so much.
Bye. Thank you.